Hello everyone and welcome to RTA Motorsports. I'm Crash. We have a Logitech Driving Force GT wheel and we're going to put it to the test. It's kind of an older wheel, but how does it still stack up today?
Welcome to RTA Motorsports.
So yeah, how does a wheel that was made in 2008 stack up today in 2015? Well, that's something we're going to go over today. This is actually part one of two videos that we're going to do. The second video, we're going to take the basic rig idea, the one that a lot of sim racers, a lot of professional sim racers, and actual champions still use today. A lot of them still use a Logitech Driving Force GT wheel or one of a similar generation. They use a single monitor or a television on a desk with a office seat and the normal stock pedals that come with it. And then we're going to compare that to lap times with my Thrustmaster TX wheel with the add-ons and the TH8A shifter, button boxes, triple screens, and the track IR setup, and see how that actually affects lap times around certain tracks, if at all. So that's going to be coming up next. Stay tuned for that. For now, we're just going to focus on the Driving Force GT rim and how it stands up to my standards today. Now, one thing I will say is my standards are not really that high. I've used certain wheels like the Fanatec CSR, of course my Thrustmaster TX wheel. I have modded T500 pedals, but I haven't used them all. I haven't used any direct drive wheels. I haven't used many of the newer Fanatec offerings that are out there. So I don't have a complete knowledge base of what's out there. I found this wheel and pedal set in a thrift store for under 20 bucks, actually closer to 15 bucks. So that was quite the score, and I jumped on it, and as soon as I saw it, I just lost my mind in the store. And so as soon as I saw it, I thought, you know, it would be a good idea to bring it home. Hopefully it worked, and you know, compare it to how it stands up to today. Because when I was shopping around for my first sim racing wheel, like most people, you come across this wheel coming up in conversation quite often. And still even today, if you go on many different forums, you see that many people are still asking for this wheel or asking for, you know, if anyone's selling it. And why? Why would people still ask for this wheel? Well, there's a good reason. And after using it for a little bit, I realized what was going on. One, it's still super inexpensive. It's an older wheel. You could still find them new. If you find them new, the price is still a little high for what you're getting as far as technology goes, not quality. So I would kind of err on the side of try to find pre-owned that still works like new. But in the pre-owned market, they're out there and they're very inexpensive, and they get you going with everything that you need, not want, but need to get going in sim racing. So also the force feedback, it's not as strong as many of the newer wheels that are out there as far as, you know, hitting the curbs or, you know, crashing or anything like that. But the force feedback is still pretty darn strong. That was something that actually surprised me, because I was thinking it was going to be more like a hand effects, more of like a vibration, less of a force feedback. But there is genuinely a force feedback in this wheel, and you could feel things like understeer and losing control, and you know, when you actually start sliding the vehicle, you could feel the force feedback kind of give way. So you could still correct the car and you could still drive the car around the track really well. Number two, I would say it's a 900-degree rotation wheel. Coming from someone that used to have a Thrustmaster T100 wheel, which is a 270-degree rotation, I was kind of weighing the pros and cons between that wheel and this wheel, and now looking back, I must say, the only pro that the Thrustmaster T100 had over this wheel is just the fact that the force feedback out of the box without much tuning felt a little bit stronger as far as hitting the curbs or hitting into the wall or anything like that. It just felt like it had a little bit more torque. Some of that might be just the fact that the wheel was a little bit lighter because it was smaller. Besides that, I would say this wheel takes that one hands down. There's also a lot of customizing out there with this wheel. A lot of companies have back then and still produce products for it, so that way you can upgrade your wheel. I do see that a lot of people in the Assetto Corsa world also use this sequential shifter as an e-brake and buy an aftermarket H-pattern shifter. And they still utilize that, but not as the intended purpose, but it comes with that as an option where the T100 did not. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into some gameplay. I'm going to discuss this wheel a little bit more. If you're kind of concerned about the pedals, let me just show them to you real quick. They're very basic pedals, much like every wheel out there, except for what you would get with maybe the G27s. Those straight out of the box, I would say, are much better pedals than this because you get a clutch. Whereas this one here, it's much like the base Thrustmaster offerings. You get a black plastic pedal deck, gas, brake. One thing I will say, the gas pedal is very linear in its throw. You don't hear any squeaks, you don't feel it binding up at all. And one thing I must note, this wheel here has gotten a lot of use, and you can tell when you look at it, it's not abused at all. There's no scratches or anything like it. But this wheel is a plastic wheel with rubber side grip extensions. And the rubber is not completely worn down, but it's shiny in some parts, which lets you know that someone was using this quite often and for a long time. The rubber still has a nice texture to it, but you can tell this wheel was used. And the pedals still feel and look like brand new. And that's one thing with Logitech. They make a lot of quality products that seem to last really long. The brake has significantly more force required to depress it all the way. So it's kind of hard to convey that information over video, but it's, I would say, and it's progressive too. The further you go down, the more force required. I would say it's about double the force of the gas pedal. Still, when you're driving with your feet, if you're an adult, the difference is not really that apparent. It's kind of there, but it's not like, oh man, you could stand on that brake pedal. It's just more force, because the gas really doesn't require much force at all to depress it. So, being double the force, it feels nicer, and it's nice that they did that, but I wouldn't say it's something like, like my brake mod that I have on my pedals or anything like that. It doesn't really bring you into that, feels like a race car sort of hard brake pedal. So those are those pedals there. I'm gonna do just a quick comparison. Like I said, this is an 11-inch rim, has 900 degrees of rotation. It's a gear mesh motor, so you can hear it. I'm gonna just let you see a quick startup video of the wheel calibrating, so that way you could actually hear what it sounds like. This is the Logitech Driving Force GT wheel, and I'm going to demonstrate to you the startup calibration and the noise you could expect to hear from the wheel. Then again, I haven't noticed this much gear noise during gameplay, but this is what it sounds like when starting up. So the wheel itself, it does got some noise to it, but it's to be expected. Number one, it's a wheel from 2008, so what do you expect? Most wheels back then were gear mesh, not necessarily belt driven or anything like that. And number two, Logitech's wheels kind of still sound like that for the most part. Maybe not quite as loud, but they're all still gear mesh and they all still have that noise. So, you know, kind of what do you expect? This is the base Thrustmaster TX wheel that you would get. This is the 458 wheel. Has plastic bottom and top, as well as rubber side grip extensions. In comparison, I would say, you know, I use this wheel quite often. Maybe not as much or, you know, as many seat time hours as this wheel has gotten, but I would say the rubber side grip extensions on this wheel are definitely grippier. Not sticky like gummy, but definitely grippier than this one here. This one is almost, it's grippy. It's definitely really grippy, and it's definitely not going to induce much sweat from your hands, but it almost feels like, at first, before I knew it was rubber, I had to question whether or not it was just like a really textured plastic. But it does have a nice texture to it that kind of mimics perforated leather. Looks premium, as well as you get this nice red dial here. Now, I would say that in sims like iRacing, I did have an issue because this is a 24 function rotary dial, and I couldn't map that in iRacing, all 24 functions. It was just left and right, counting as two separate buttons. I haven't hooked this up to the PlayStation to see what titles I could actually map all 24 functions to, but there is a ton of buttons on this wheel. You have these two bumpers back here, which count as R2 and L2. You have actual paddle shifters on the back. I would say they're more like buttons. If you ever driven in some GM vehicles, like the Cadillac CTS-V has buttons on the back. Some of the older Camaro SS's have just buttons on the back instead of actual paddles. It's much like the same thing. It actually feels very similar too in size and in shape, and as well as the tactile feedback of it. You have a D-pad here on the left. You have your triangle, square, X, and circle that you would expect to see in a PlayStation wheel. You have these L3 and R3 that are pretty neat buttons, and they have a pretty good feedback to them. They feel like quality buttons. I mean, they're still there after all these years of being used. You have this plus and minus button here. I'm guessing you can map that to something like brake bias, or you can map this to brake bias. And the GT logo in the middle lights up, actually has a pretty nice look to it, being that it's lit up, especially if you're doing some night racing. But if you press it in, you can map it to anything you want, a horn or whatever. And you have your PS button down here, as well as select and start. Over here you have your sequential shifter, like I said before, a lot of people use as their e-brake function. And back here on either side you have these twist locks that bring down these legs here, so that way you could clamp it onto a desk. Now, I must say, this desk is not the most sturdiest desk in the world. It's definitely not meant for gaming, but when I clamp this down, not with a lot of twisting force, but you know, it feels tight, I will break this desk before I will take this wheel off the desk. It's solid. It really is. If you have a really solid desk, these clamps by far are the best clamps that I've seen. The Thrustmaster TX clamps, they're good and they work really well. The amount of torque that wheel produces, I would never clamp it to this desk, it would just break it. But it comes with a screw, and you have to screw it in the bottom of the wheel deck, and it kind of feels a little not flimsy, but it's not as easy to use because you have to put it together on the bottom of the wheelbase to get it to work. A lot of people do it all the time. Works very well. But this one here is just, it's a part of the wheel deck. It's literally just two arms. You slide it on the desk, you twist these two down, and you're done. It's all a part of the wheel itself, and it just feels very easy to use. And obviously, it works very well because there is no play at all between the wheel and the desk. So very impressed there. So we're gonna get going. Another thing to note that I did want to say was I had an issue with getting the wheel itself drivers, and that was surprising because I have a Logitech G35 7.1 headset that I use, and when you download the drivers for that, you get their gaming software. So I thought when I connected this to that, it would pop up in the bottom. That was not the case. I had to go back and find the old Wingman software that I use for my e-brake, and actually that is the software for this. So it kind of makes sense. It's an older wheel. It's not going to be seen by the newer software. You have to use the older software to kind of get it to work. Or else it just diverts to, I think it's like 225 degrees of rotation. Doesn't give you the full 900. So you have to go back to Logitech's website, find the old software, download that, install it, and then you get the drivers. And then you can map whatever you want to it. You get some, it's pretty decent software suite. Definitely old and looking, but it works. So we're gonna jump into Assetto Corsa and we're gonna take a few laps, and I'm gonna kind of give you my driving impressions as we're going. All right, so we're in Assetto Corsa and we're gonna go and just set up I think I'm gonna do a quick race. And what we're gonna do is one that I have done already. It's a it's the SCG003C, and we're gonna go at the Barcelona, and we're gonna take the moto circuit so we don't get that final chicane. But I find that I like that the best. I feel it's a much faster track, and especially with AI, it feels a lot better. So the one thing that's nice that I will say about racing on a single monitor is, with my computer, I have an R9 290X Tri-X 8GB. That thing screams with just a single monitor. I get way over 100 frames per second. I wouldn't say all the time, but most of the time, depending on in these games how many AI I have. I like racing with around 14-15 opponents. So we're gonna just set grid type to random. Opponent strength, I'm not gonna leave it on 98. Let's scale that back maybe to 90. The higher you go, I still find that they kind of just dive bomb me a little bit too often. It's not quite fun, and the lead car is always just gone. So I'm not that good. We're just gonna leave it on 90%. The lowest you can go is 80, but we'll leave it on 90. At 80, it's a little too easy. And that's it. So we're gonna jump in. I have the settings of the car on Pro, so there are no nannies, pretty much no traction control or anything like that. I definitely, just on a side note, with Assetto Corsa in their recent update, like how fast it loads up. It seems like they definitely optimized a lot of settings there, where if you're playing any sort of just a quick race and it has to load up a lot of vehicles, it runs through the vehicles a lot quicker and kind of gets you in game a lot faster. So pretty much right now we have all of the graphical settings maxed out, and it looks prettier than than anything I've ever experienced on my triple screen. With my triple monitors, they're all only 60 hertz, so I have to scale back things just a little bit. If they were 120 or 144 hertz, I would have to probably scale it back even more. But I pretty much, optimize it where I can hit about 60 frames. Sometimes it goes over that, depending on the game. With iRacing, I have everything maxed out, no problem. iRacing, Assetto Corsa, and especially Race Room, I scale certain things back a little bit. Notice some things have more of a graphical impact than others. So anyway, let's get in the game. Let's talk about the wheel. That was completely off topic. Idea where we're starting off at. Looks like we're maybe around 8th, maybe a little bit further back than that. See, I love the feeling of the force feedback right now. It's pretty good. I'm getting a lot of the same feelings I would get from my Thrustmaster TX base as far as feedback from the turns. Definitely no clipping. right now I don't even notice. Ah, we're going off the track. I haven't practiced at this track much, so talking and driving is always a difficulty for me, but feel the curbs pretty nicely there. See, when you're running over the curbs, it feels more of like a vibration and less like independent, just thuds. I'm not used to. Not used to not being able to see out my side window there. You can probably see the wheel fighting me a little bit. This part of the track we're hitting about 93 frames per second with 14 other cars. See if we could get him on the outside and maybe get him on the inside of this turn here. That turn always gets me. Whew, things are falling over there. See, I can see why a lot of people like this wheel. It's definitely a good wheel. I mean, I'm having a blast with it. It's a far departure from my current wheel as far as like the torque and the feelings that I'm used to feeling. Because I've used my wheel for quite a while now. So it's taken a little bit to get used to. I didn't really practice with this wheel much. I just made sure it ran pretty much, and it worked. And did a few practices, and here we are. So it's taken a little bit for me to get used to, especially around the turns. Some of the sharper or off-camber turns, I'm looking for. It's like driving in a car you never really driven in before. There we go, that's a little bit better. Smooth. That's the best way I can describe it. It doesn't feel horrible, and it doesn't feel like a wheel I won't have fun with. If I'm looking to purchase a beginner wheel, this is an awesome wheel. Don't let my inability to drive at the moment fool you. It definitely is an awesome wheel. It just, if you've sim raced for a while before, and you have your specific wheel that you use, when you go to another wheel, and if you haven't practiced with it much, it's like driving in a car that's not yours. Got a little bit of a drift there going. Slight, but I felt it in the wheel. sequential shifter is definitely really positive and gives you a nice click when you pull back on it. One thing I will notice is it doesn't require a lot of force to actuate it, and it's a very short throw, which I can appreciate. I like short throw shifters, especially in sequential style shifters. There's no appreciable dead spot on center, which is nice. I feel the force feedback and I was able to correct that mistake right there, and feel the car kind of giving out. But yeah, there's no appreciable dead spot on center that I can notice. I feel the force feedback through the entire range of the wheel. I like the placement of this, you know. When I was thinking of purchasing my first wheel, I looked at this wheel before I got my T100. And I was, you know, kind of questioning that and its placement. Kind of felt a little gimmicky. Yeah, I felt gimmicky about it. It didn't feel gimmicky because I had never seen one of these in person and used it. And I was like, you know, I don't know about that location, because it kind of seems like, you know, what car has a sequential shifter right behind and to the right of the wheel? You know, would that feel kind of wrong? I actually really appreciate how close it is. Got someone to the right of us. I hit him anyway. So, you know, don't let that fool you. It's a really nice location for a sequential shifter. I haven't really practiced much on this track. I am just getting my butt whooped by everyone on this track. Let's slow down here. And now I'm holding up traffic. Thank God I'm not online. Everyone would dogpile me right there. But like coming over that turn there, there's a little bit of a patch of broken pavement. And you feel it in the wheel. You feel the different cracks in the pavement and whatnot. So the type of race we were doing here at the Barcelona track that Assetto Corsa just updated us with is I tried to make it like a Gt3 style race. All the Gt3 cars that are inside Assetto Corsa. These McLarens are wanting to get past me in the worst way. You see them kind of bobbing and weaving behind me. Ah, right off the track. You could feel the sand. That's pretty cool. All right, so it says my fastest lap time is 154.578, which is pretty horrible, pretty horrible. But we got a good look at the wheel and how it works. I gotta say, for an older wheel, I am thoroughly impressed. I really like this wheel. I could see why it had a fan base for so long and still does. A lot of people still seek these out for a good beginner wheel. It just brings to mind right now, what about the T150, the Thrustmaster T150? I've tried it and I've owned the T100. I have the Thrustmaster TX. I've tried the CSR wheel by Fanatec, Fanatic, I'm sorry. And I've now tried the DFGT wheel as well as the Logitech G27. I say if you could find one of these pre-owned on under $100, definitely worth it. Or even around 150 bucks, definitely worth it. There's not much out there that can compete with it. With the amount of buttons that you have on here, the pedals are decent at best. They're much like the Thrustmaster base pedals, I would say. You know, not much different there. They're smooth, they work, they have carpet grippers on the back. So right now I don't have the pedals slid up against anything. I'm just using the carpet grippers and they work just fine. They haven't moved around for me. So and you get a sequential shifter that you can map into, you know, e-brake or whatever you want to do with it. So it's a lot of bang for the buck. The T150 is the only wheel that I'm really kind of wondering will give this a run for its money. So it should be interesting to see what happens when that wheel really starts to come out to the public, whether or not it's going to be the better bang for the buck, because both these wheels straight out of the box are not removable. You can't change these wheels. So it's kind of like Thrustmaster brought back the DFGT wheel minus the sequential shifter, but with that wheel you could use the TH8A shifter. So I don't know, it's pretty interesting. I'm not sure which way to go in that conversation. If I do get to try one, I will give you my input on it. But as of right now, I am pretty impressed with this wheel. Again, 900 degrees of rotation. You have the gear mesh. It's Logitech, so it's going to last quite a while. Obviously, this one has. And so there you go. If you're looking for a beginner wheel and you're looking for one that's pre-owned at a good price, I would definitely shoot this way. I kind of wish I did. To be honest with you, originally I would have chose this wheel over the Thrustmaster T100 wheel. So there you go. There's my opinion. I hope you enjoyed. Again, if you're a sim racer or just a racer in general, have a great day and race on.